Jennifer, good to see you. Hello. Jennifer, good to see you. Hello. Jennifer, good to see you.
Hi,
Jose.
good to see you. Hello.
Hello.
Greetings from Madrid, my friends.
Hello, Jose.
Hello, everybody. So nice to see you.
Hi, Alexander.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Jennifer.
Hello.
Hi, Jose.
Hi, hello.
Hello.
Kuniko, hello.
Oh,
Hello.
hello.
Hello, hello.
Attila, before we start, just a quick hello to all of you. Very nice to seeing you. Although it would be much better in person, of course.
Yes.
But at least we have this opportunity. So I'm looking forward to the whole conference.
Hi.
Okay, so can we start? Лена.
Добрый день. Да, конечно, все готовы, переводчики
Good
готовы.
afternoon. Yeah, the interpreters are ready, so you
Okay.
are good to start.
So to make it quicker, I will start in English. So first of all, I would like to welcome everyone at our 10th conference on foresight and science, technology, innovation policies. Actually, I'm glad that we have survived after the 10 years of uncertainty, which is the key challenge for foresight. And our conference has become a visible event on the global foresight map. Although, of course, it's a pity that we cannot meet in person this time and have to cope with the pandemic in this distant mode. Anyway, this pandemic, the last year, has been so challenging that definitely it will require the raise of new questions before the foresight community, and definitely we'll have to reply. I looked through the agenda. It's very tight as before. So instead of 3 full days, we have now 5 days in the middle of the day in order to meet the global diversity and wide geographical coverage of our conference, from Japan to the United States. Time convenient for everyone. So as before, we have 2 broad issues to cover. The first one is foresight, involving both methodologies, new developments, interesting results which we obtained and our colleagues obtained during the last year. And on the other hand, science, technology, innovation policies with the view of looking at country developments and new academic studies, new policy evaluation exercises, and so forth. But in any case, everything is still about the future. So both foresight directly and policy discussions again about the lessons we have learned and the implications for the future. We have, for the time being, 450 registered participants from across the globe, and I'm glad that really this is an indicator of the impact of this conference. Certainly, I don't think that everyone will join any single session, but still, we have such a broad agenda that altogether that will be really fine. So our first session is devoted to foresight and the lessons we learned from the last last year and what does it mean for the future, particularly with the impact of the COVID global pandemic. So there have been a lot of speculations during this year about how this will change the world, the way of life, the style of life, how it will challenge the economic growth, global trade, transportation, ICT, and so forth. A lot of interesting and novel trends we have been able to monitor. So we tried to bring together four very well established speakers on Foresight. So really to have an overview from different parts of the world, how the Foresight community responds to this new challenge. I would like to ask every speaker to stick to 15 minutes so that we'll reserve some time at the end for discussion. The participants are invited to put their questions in the chat, but if you address the non-Russian speaking speakers, then please try to do it in English in order to make it quicker. So our first speaker is Kuniko Urashima, representing the Japanese National Institute for Science and Technology Policy. The institute is the initiator of Foresight studies globally, and really the place where Foresight has started and is being developed. Probably it's the only place where Foresight has been developed already for 50 years without any break. And Kuniko is the leading and best known Foresighter from Japan, our regular participant and very good friend. So Kuniko, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes, it's fine. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, thank you so much for inviting me. And it's a little bit pity because I cannot meet you. So I hope we can meet together in April. And actually, our COVID situation is not too bad compared with Europe. Only about 1,000 patient we got every day, so it's not too bad. But we are really worried about the after that. So today I'm going to talk about our current results. Sorry, the title is a little bit different, but I'm going to talk about the two issues today. Actually, I'd like to remind you that because today's talk, we got these results just last week. So this is really, really hot topics. So therefore, we haven't opened our results yet to the public. So therefore, today's results might be changed because of the double check. So therefore, please do not use until the end of November without our permission. Okay. So anyway, I'm going to talk about the two issues because this time we wanted to compare with the previous results, which is the 11th Foresight survey, and how people changed their mind because of COVID-19. So I'm going to talk about these results. But at the beginning, I have to explain a little bit about our previous results. So as you know that we are going to celebrate the half-century anniversary next year because we started the Foresight survey in 1971. So, and actually our current Foresight survey, which was the 11th Foresight survey, did it from 2017 to 19 because we are now trying to make the 6th Science and Technology Basic Plan, which will be start from next April. So therefore, we needed to submit all of the data to the stakeholders and also policy makers to explain and what is our future image of the future and what is key technology, so on. And this is the outline of the 11th Foresight survey. Actually, we spent 2 years to finish all of the investigation. And the part 1 was horizon scanning, which is targeted from now to the 2040. And also we needed to make some vision, which is our target was 2040. Then this part 3 is we call Delphi survey. So today I'm going to talk about the results of this one and the current results for that. Then because I already explained this scenario planning last November, so therefore I will skip for that. But I need to explain the design of our Delphi survey because we needed to compare with these results and the current results. So that time we set up 7 areas and totally 702 topics. And because we needed to cover all of science and technology topics, and so it was a little bit difficult to choose 702 because we didn't have any framework for that. So just each committee decided each topics. And this was a question for the Delphi topics. So we needed to know what is the importance and how is the international competitiveness. And also we wanted to know the technology realization year and also social realization year. And also we needed what is the key challenge to realize the topics. It was human resource budget collaboration or environment regulation and others. But this time we didn't have enough time. So basically we asked only this technological and the social realization year and importance. I will let you know the more detail later. But this is a area and the field. So we covered all of science and technology topics. So totally 702. And each area has those number of topics. Okay, so that time, we sent lots of email to our scientists. And fortunately, we got about 6,700 of respondents at the first round. Then, because this is Delphi survey, so we needed to send the second also. So second round is, we got 5,300 answered. And unfortunately, we couldn't get many answers from younger people. And most of the answer is the male because of Japan. And also we got many answers from mainly university people. So we wanted to get more answer from the company, but it was difficult that time. Okay, so this is a survey structure, but this is a little bit complicated. So I will skip for that. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about our current results, which, as I said, we've just finished to analyze the last week. So this is really, really hard. So the purpose of the current survey is that because our decision maker says that what is the effect of science and technology? So we wanted to know which topics might be affected by COVID-19 or some topic is not. So that's why we wanted to know how importance it changed technological realization time and social realization time. And they could choose from those answers. So then we could calculate it. So for example, the importance, they could change the very high to the I don't know. And technological realization time is it's earlier. It's realizing 5 years earlier or 2 or 3 or 4 years, so on. Or maybe it's gonna be late or something. Then social realization time is the same. Then this is the overview of respondent. Because as I said, we needed to cover all of science and technology. And actually, we try to identify some specific topics because of COVID-19. But it was really, really complicated. So that's why we kind of give it up. Then we send all of the questions to all of our scientists. Then actually it was about 2 weeks, we did this survey by online from September 17th to October 5th. And because this time we couldn't send a lot of email to all of our scientists, but we have our own network, which we call NICE-STEP network. And about 2,000 specialists is belonging our network. So fortunately, we could get about 70% of answers from them. Okay, so this is the results. This is all over the results. So I'm going to talk about the detail later, but this is the results compared with the previous one and the current one. Okay, so the 11th one is the previous one, which is this blue one. And this time one is this red one. So it seems 0.4 to 0.8, slightly important for the pre-peak, and distribution is very varied. So I'm going to talk about the detail. So this is a detail of the technical realization year and the social realization year. Oh, sorry. Okay, it seems, okay, so of course, the respondent rate was different than the before. So that's why it was a little bit difficult to analyze, but we made this calculation, then we compared. So it seems most of the technology will realize by 2030 or 35. Then social realization, of course, will shift 5 years from the technology realization year. So, but it seems compared with this technological realization, the social realization, it seems most of the topics will realize almost the same time as the technology and the social. So this is kind of surprising for us. Okay, so this is really busy, but this is all of the topics we put together. So this is a technological realization. And those area is realizing late, and this is getting earlier. So as I said, most of the technology will realize about 2030. And this, like a pink dot, is a health issue. And agriculture is this yellow, and the purple is environment, so on. So then look at this social realization. Okay, of course, it's shifted a little bit, but as I said, most of the topics is almost the same. I don't know why, but anyway. So, however, this is a like a space issue. It seems a little bit delay than the before to realize. So this is a message. Also, this is city building, which is a kind of infrastructure. Infrastructure is also very important for our country because we are really predict a huge earthquake near future, especially in the middle of Tokyo. Therefore, we are reconstructing the many buildings, but maybe the priority might change, which means the government cannot funding for those areas. So that's why many scientists predicted that those areas gonna be late a little bit. Okay, so sorry, this is also, oops, busy, but this is the top 10 of realizing earlier than the 11th Foresight survey. So we actually, I predicted maybe a little bit more time different we can get, but actually it's only 2.5 years. It's a maximum. So, which means it's kind of, you know, almost the same. But it seems because many people is now staying at home, even in Japan, and also I'm also staying at home, so I don't need to go to office. So many workers is changing the lifestyle. So those issue is it's getting realized earlier than the before. So as you can see here. So anyway, I will give you my presentation later when we got the permission. So then you can see the more detail from now, from here. And those topics is realizing later than the 11th survey. So which is also, it's affect 2 years later, so on. And space and infrastructure and some environment issue, it seems it's realizing later than the 11th survey. So which means, as I said, maybe priority is a little bit different than the before. So therefore space is not important. So that's why we got such results. Okay, so this is a summary and conclusions. Actually, okay, so the 11th survey topics that were predicted to be realized were faster. Faster one is getting faster, and slower is getting slower, it seems. Then earlier, getting earlier and getting delay is at least 1 to 2.5 years. And the realization will be area topics is work and work style, health, crisis management. And the delayed one will, is living area, space, deep sea, or energy conversion, etc. Okay, thank you so much. And I will save the question, my time, save my time for the question. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Kuniko. So we'll collect all the questions and we'll ask the speakers to reply at the end of the session. So
Okay.
our next speaker is Jennifer Harper. Actually, Jennifer represents the Council for Science and Technology in Malta. However, Jennifer is well known as one of the leading European experts on foresight and evaluation of European programs. So I hope that you will tell us more about the most recent issues at the European Commission, including this EU Green Deal, which is being widely discussed in media now. Please, Jennifer.
Yes. Thanks, Leonid. Thank you very much for that introduction. Shall I share my PowerPoint? Just a second. maybe I can already start, Leonid, without the.
Yes, please do.
Yes, because of time. So.
Лен, вы поможете со слайдами? So what do we do with the slides?
Okay.
I asked Elena to show slides. She will start in a minute.
Okay, very good. All right. So yeah, I'm just opening up my slides as well so I can. Right. So I think by way of an introduction, I thought I would refer back a little bit to a study which I was involved in pre-COVID for the JRC, for the EU Joint Research Centre, which was looking at the role of foresight in addressing the Sustainable Development Goals. And I think the study, for me, provided certain insights, both in terms of the literature survey that we carried out of different foresight activities that have been carried out on the SDGs at different levels at EU. And also because we had some internal discussions within the EU with different agencies that are responsible for implementing the SDGs. And okay, so this is good. So just because time is limited, I will just limit myself a little bit in terms of what I will focus on here. But I think what's interesting, maybe to keep in mind in terms of what will follow when I go into the EU Green Deal, is that there is quite a strong emphasis on the use of scenarios in tackling SDGs. And here, they played a particularly important role in terms of the science policy interface and in bringing together different players. And here we see, in a way, quite a restricted set of players, the scenario analysts and the scientists and policymakers. However, there was a kind of word of caution in terms of using these scenarios. One of the key things is the extent to which the scenarios may be unsustainable in at least one or more respects, and also in terms of underestimating the challenge of what needs to be done in terms of embarking on a sustainable development path. It is also interesting to note that in these exercises, the SDG goals at global level may be inconsistent when they are defined at the sectoral level. So it's important to keep in mind the level of granularity that one is looking at these. Some key things which we focused on in the study was the role of trade-offs across time, sectors, and issues. And here, very important, the interlinkages, synergies, and the trade-offs between the SDGs themselves. There's a lot more work. One of the conclusions of the study was that there's a lot more work which needs to be done on how foresight can be used effectively in addressing the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. So maybe next slide then. So I thought this would be quite a useful backdrop for going into the EU Green Deal, which is basically the proposal for a new growth strategy for Europe, because I think some of the things are quite relevant. Pre-pandemic, there was this drive to adopt a new growth strategy. And actually in December of last year, the Commission brought forward the proposal for the Green Deal. And then with the onset of the pandemic, actually the Green Deal proposal was questioned by some, but eventually it became part of the EU recovery package. So it's actually gone forward. And I think I've included here a little quote from the EU Strategic Foresight Report 2020, where it is actually saying that the impact of the pandemic crisis has actually highlighted the importance of discussing what kind of economic growth are we really talking about? What is actually desirable? And here I think a very key development is the emphasis on just and inclusive growth. So here I go into the next slide. And I'll just hone in here on the
Я
fact.
хочу здесь сделать упор на том, что инклюзивный переход к нейтральной Европе, климатически нейтральной Европе к 50 году является основной целью. Конечно, нужно принимать во внимание большое количество факторов.
And a number of.
У переводчика отключен микрофон.
Next slide. I think the essential thing about the commitment to the EU Green Deal is that it is presenting both a challenge and an opportunity for Europe. It's about, I think, both setting the ambition and having an action plan in place, but actually, if it's really going to be implemented, it needs to really be a call for action Europe-wide. And that's really spanning a whole number of areas. And this is why, because the pathways involved are going to be different, there's different aspects that have to be, different pathways that have to be explored here at different levels. And some of these, I think foresight is, you can already see that foresight is linked to a lot of these. So adaptation, transition, and disruption are key things that foresight plays with, but also the fact that we're trying to tackle a number of different aspects all at once, both the social, technological, economic, environmental, political, and last but not least, values. Because as I mentioned before, just and inclusive is really almost mainstreaming values into the whole process, which I think is very important. And I think the pandemic has really underlined the importance of this solidarity if our societies are going to continue to be cohesive and function. I think what's also critical is the active role foreseen for citizens as prosumers. So there's interesting concepts at the moment like energy citizenship. How can citizens play a really active role in the type of energy that they use, and also in generating energy, actually playing an active role in the economy there. So very important things. And of course, one of the key issues here is going to be, again, the trade-offs, the tensions, but also some of the complementarities that can be exploited in addressing multi-level policies. So from EU to national, regional, and down to the local level. Next slide. I think this is really calling for a new level of ambition for foresight, what foresight can really do. It's really stretching foresight, I think. It's a very exciting phase. I think the pandemic has really highlighted the importance of being prepared in a kind of crisis-prone situation, and as a result, foresight has grown in importance. I'm noticing at national level, but also at European level, a kind of renewed interest in foresight, and this is due, I think, to increased relevance. It's increased relevance in the current situation, and the recognition of that relevance by policymakers, which I think is a significant advance. In this case, I think with the Green Deal, the ambition is that it will go multi-level, multi-sectoral, but also looking at values involving the local level, going down to the citizens in a very active way. Next slide. I've tried to flag here what foresight's potential in this new context could be. A lot of the things are familiar. Of course, it's anticipatory. It's about looking at different ways of doing things. We heard, there's this move to a new growth model. How can we come up with this new growth model? How can we ensure that everyone is on board, that no one is discriminated against or left behind in the new growth model? It's also about future-proofing policies, and I think very importantly, coherence across sectors and across different levels, across policies. The EU Green Deal is not replacing the SDGs. It is about implementing the SDGs still. So a lot of the things which I identified at the beginning, the challenges of implementing the SDGs, they're still there with the Green Deal. But I think now it's moving to a certain urgency, the whole thing, and also a level of commitment at European level, a strong level of commitment backed up by investments as well. I think a key thing for me in this situation is the fact that foresight can really help to leverage capacities, competencies, and resources at many different levels. And how do you leverage them in a kind of synergistic way? This I think is going to be a very important role for foresight. And of course, I mean, foresight is always there in terms of bringing in engagement and ownership in co-designing just futures. So next slide, please. Now, more specifically, the Green Deal is actually about green and digital transitions. And actually the twinning of these two transitions is very important, but obviously the two have to go in hand and they have to be mutually reinforcing. So there's a lot of work here to be done, exploring what works, what doesn't work, and bringing on board the different stakeholders to pilot some activities. I think foresight here can play an important role in terms of mutually reinforcing policies across multiple levels, but also across different sectors. It's, I think, going to be important for identifying key tensions, barriers, opportunities, resolving trade-offs, but importantly, I think, trying to build a momentum of multi-level actions, which is what is required. Next slide. I'm going to deviate a little now into trying to give an example of the types of challenges that are there when member states are implementing these policies, are implementing the Green Deal. And I'm giving a little bit the perspective from my own country. We're at the moment formulating a national strategic R&I plan. And at the same time, we have just finalized our smart specialization plan, which is a more local regional plan, which is required to unlock regional funds from the European Union. And there is some interesting tensions there between the two. And the reason for this is that obviously the goals and objectives for economic growth, R&I driven economic growth, which are set at national level, do not always cohere with regional level policies, or very, very kind of local. In our case, the two come together because Malta is a very small country. However, there are differences in the approach. So with our smart specialization strategy, the consultation process, which is kind of quite foresight based, is very much driven bottom up. So it works very much with individuals at the individual level, whereas the national exercise is very much about consultations top down with policymakers, with different ministries. And how these two come together is not always obvious. So there are some tensions there. At national level, you have the national targets, policies. It's about capacity, building capacity, addressing priority needs. Whereas with the regional level, with the RIS, we're looking at what our strengths are and where do we have a competitive advantage. And it's very much looking at business-driven growth. When it comes to investing resources, the rationales are quite different as well. So from the national level, there's a directionality. We have certain policies we're trying to implement, and we go ahead with those. These are government policies. And then at the regional level, it's very much driven by entrepreneurial discovery. So there are these tensions also in terms of the approach. Very much at regional level, going down to specific niche areas which are location focused. So next slide. However, there are some interesting complementarities, and this is actually what we are trying to build on at the moment. So in terms of the goals, there is a level of overlap, both national and regional. We're looking at how to make transitions, how to implement transitions, how to modernize. In terms of the approaches, we are using consultation, forward-looking approaches, participatory, very much participatory, involving as many interested players and stakeholders as possible. And the principles are very much the same, evidence-based and depending on sound monitoring and evaluation systems. And here, the aim is to really try to build bridges to connect the national and the regional and local level. Next. So here really the role of foresight is about how can we use foresight to make some transitions. We're trying to use foresight as a kind of open space for bringing together regional level stakeholders with the more high level policymakers. And I think a key thing which is emerging is how to ensure responsibility towards current and future generations. This is our goal. Next slide. So this just to give you a quick snapshot at what's happening. So we have in our RIS, Regional Innovation Strategy 2020, we've identified niche areas after several rounds of consultations with local players from the quadruple, because it's not just the triple helix, but we also bring in also citizens into the process. And we have identified here the main areas now from the risk perspective that we're going to be focusing on. And now we're trying to identify ways of how we're going to create a kind of mutual reinforcement of actions to address these areas, these niche areas, from the national perspective. Because at national level, we've committed to the EU Green Deal, among other things. Basically, we have two distinct strategies, one at national and one at regional, but we're trying to ensure complementarity between the two. And we're looking at how we can address the niches as levers for green and digital transitions. So this is how it's we're trying to make it work. And there's we're still experimenting a little bit with this, because our national strategic plan is currently being formulated. So and this is where we will go into more detail how the EU Green Deal will be implemented, but how it will also work with the risk strategy, so that the two can mutually reinforce each other. Next slide. So, okay, this is my final slide, just in summary. So I think this lasting impact of the COVID pandemic on the policy and governance systems, I think it's really reinforced a need for foresight, and maybe more specifically early warning and rapid response mechanisms, which actually we had discussed at EU level in a strategic foresight group linked to Horizon. But I think beyond that, it's also about how can we really have R&I policy design, which is based on robust policy approaches. And to do this, I think the importance of foresight in addressing multi-level policy coherence, also across sectors, and in terms of joined up policies at national, regional level, EU, national and regional level. And a further complication to all this is the transition to the new growth model, and the need here to factor in values. And I think this is a real big challenge, but I think this is where foresight can really play a role. And I think mainly it's going to be about how foresight can really act as a kind of bridging mechanism, linking different policy levels, sectors, but also current and future generations. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. So our next speaker is Yulia Milshina. Yulia is the leading researcher at our Foresight Center at the Higher School of Economics. And Yulia is in charge of our long-lasting study on global trends. So Yulia, the floor is yours, and I hope she will tell us about how global trends change under the impact of the pandemic. Please. Yulia, звук.
Turn on the sound. Very good day, colleagues. Thank you, Mr. Goldberg. I'm honored to speak at this online conference. I apologize. I will continue in English. Thank you. Today I'd like to tell you what changes we believe will happen to the global trends and how the world will alter after the pandemic. At the start, I will tell you briefly about our methodologies. Now I will present the outcomes of the research and surveys that we do together with the TASS news agency or information agency. It is still an ongoing project. It will come out in a month's time, and you will be able to familiarize yourselves with that online. So the methodology is based on the global trends system with a huge database that we have been accumulating for more than 10 years. The most powerful tools that we use here are iForum by ISSEK, which is a smart data analysis system with 350 million of documents. We analyze them with text mining, statistical, and patent analysis tools. As a result, we got more than 1,000 global trends that have gone through the expert verification. And we have singled out 3 types of trends: the growing trends, the falling trends, and unstable trends. You all know that the speed of technological change is exponential. The pace is exponential, and all the policymakers and foresighters and entrepreneurs and business captains have been saying that now is the time of global uncertainty, ambiguity, etc. It's quite a tumultuous and turbulent time. Each minute, more than 200,000 people chat on Zoom at conferences, and the number has been growing. And each day, more than $1 million worth transactions of online shopping are conducted. So we can find our bearings in this new context with the global trend analysis. They may be mutually reinforcing, or they may weaken each other, and they may overlap and it can entail cross impacts. We identify new economic model trends, climate change and natural resources use, demographic and social change, geopolitical and government systems, and emerging vectors of science and technology development. Well, the COVID pandemic has become a wild card that was unlikely to happen, but with very high potential impact that actually occurred. And it impacted the pace and the vector of different trends. The pandemics throughout the history of humankind, well, conditioned the cycles and the pace of societal change and urbanization. Today, we have very high interconnectivity and very sophisticated transport systems. The disease needs less than 36 hours to get from one remote location of our planet to a big city. So this year, we're expecting the worst recession since World War II, with the projected slump in global GDP by 4.5%, and many countries will come back to the output levels they had in 2019, no earlier than in 2022. Only 15% of companies will win that out. At the same time, additional risks propagate, potential jokers or wild cards, like the antimicrobial resistance, bioterrorism, and accessibility of new synthetic technologies. But let us come back to the trend notion, and building upon that, let's see how trends changed. In this context, trend is a development direction which entails certain changes and has long-term nature. The main parameters are evolution. So trends have vectors of change, high influence potential, time limitation, and evidence-based nature. We have subdivided trends into 3 main blocks rising trends, falling trends, and unstable trends. It's noteworthy that the digital technology, the new technology of today, is not an option, but is a prerequisite rather, that brings together universities, companies and stakeholders with respect to growing trends. All of them felt the impact of major forces like the digitalization, low-touch economy, cybersecurity threats, and the slowdown in economic growth rates. We have singled out several categories here and looked at remoteness, remote employment models, and city centralization, centralized cities, or decentralized, growth of online retail and logistics, and contactless payments, including digital ones, dominance of platforms and ecosystems on the left-hand side. The social trends on the right-hand side include, the most salient of them include having home as a hub for life, increased attention to health, social distance and new health standards, and a shift to lifelong learning and online learning, and career reassessment. Technological trends include a speedy penetration of AI, robotics, IoT, and additive technologies in all the spheres of our life. Some of the well, there is a separate area which is COVID tech. I'll tell you more about it in next slide. The life sciences are rapidly evolutionizing now, and we also can see the upswing of fake news and AI-enabled hype, as well as forecasts, news, and scientific projections, which is a very important trend. As a result of the new ADM, over those several months, a new mode of application of digital tech has emerged in order to see the speedy recovery of the economy. COVID tech may have several fields: tracking and movement control, for example, diagnostics and telemedicine, as well as services for distant work and education, partnership and cooperation services between like universities, companies, and other entities, use of AI to fight the pandemic and to make projections about the further spread of the disease, and ways to obtain medicines and handle the pandemic, social support, information support, and a strategic focus on digital technology. No less important is the data protection and privacy domain. Apart from that, the smart cities have become the buzzword, and everywhere national governments implement the smart cities to handle COVID, to prop up medical strategies and healthcare strategies, and these demonstrate the worthiness of those technologies and help shape the images of the smart cities, and incentivizing and spurring the advancement of the smart city technologies. Drones are used for video surveillance and AI temperature measurement, autonomous delivery, twins, city digital twins, and micromobility services, all these trends that are already manifesting themselves. Will definitely be carried on in future, like in Moscow, for instance. A full-fledged network of face recognition video surveillance will be rolled out with more than 200,000 cameras across the city. The open data policy in cities may raise the global GDP by $1 trillion.
As for the downward trends, we see the trends connected with the privacy of personal data, connected particularly with the shift to online mode, maybe the lack of information among the people how to use data, security data. We saw a breach over 3.5 million users globally at the first half of the 2020. Moreover, we see a shift from offline communication, but we see the increase in streaming services, such applications as Zoom, with all the conferences and parties going on, the significant growth in podcasts. The fashion industry has demonstrated the biggest fall ever by 30% over the year to date, about 46 billion loss in sales compared with 2019, and the trend is going to be the same for the next year to come. We see the significant increase in service market, and a huge number of companies went bust, and those which are still on the market had to adjust to very stringent quarantine measures. Event industry has gone under huge transformation. There is almost no offline events going on. There's a total shift to online broadcast interactive formats. We see new tools of digital media, a huge stagnation in tourism sector, around 46 people, those engaged in tourism sector lost their jobs. As for unstable trends, these trends demonstrated fall during the pandemic in short term, but we expect them to grow post-pandemic times. Everything is not that certain. There are several vectors of their development, but so far we don't have certain answers. Therefore, we call them unstable trends, which include the responsible consumption. On the one hand, the companies are trying to get by. Please stick to your time limit. I'm concluding. Just in brief, the responsible consumption, supply chains, shared economy, silver and green economies, and renewable sources of energy. You have all the information on the slides. Thank you very much for your attention. I'd like to conclude. Thank you very much for your attention once again.
Thank you very much. So I guess there is no need to introduce the World Energy Council as the major global think tank involving national governments and also major global companies in this sector. I would like to invite Anastasia Belostotskaya, who is in charge of the Foresight activity at the World Energy Council, please.
Leonid, спасибо большое. Thank you very much for introduction and for inviting the World Energy Council to this conference. I think it's great that even in a time of crisis, we can find positive benefits for connecting remotely and still have a good conversation. So in this presentation, I'd like to share the World Energy Council work on the use of the foresights and supporting leaders in how to better recover from the crisis and achieve transformative outcomes. So just let me start by saying a few words about the World Energy Councils and our origins. We are almost 100-year-old organization and the first global energy community. And in 1924, we started up as the World Power Conference when the world was recovering from the global influenza pandemic and about to face the Great Depression, which is very much sounds familiar to what we have right now. And through all our history, we maintain our enduring mission on securing better energy for better lives and a healthy planet. And we're open to all, technologically and politically neutral, and our membership spans across 90 countries from public, private, and academic sectors. So when we talk about the crisis, it's really important to see the broader context because nothing happens in a vacuum. And the crisis, this COVID crisis, has been a shock on already stressed energy systems. And even before the crisis, we already had signals of the sluggish economic growth, climate change momentum, and increasing issues of social energy agenda. So COVID-19 has reminded us of the importance of energy in our lives. And it has also demonstrated that individual actions have a global impact. So an even bigger picture is the essential place to start if we really want to emerge from this crisis as a stronger society and successfully manage global energy transition. So today, the energy industry is grappling with a new era of energy transition that we call an era of energy for people and planet. And we have added a 4D disruption, as usual, to have to the three key global drivers of change that we've been tracking for over decades. And the 4Ds are obviously decarbonization, which is about potentially enabling climate neutrality by 2050, decentralization, which is about accelerating the pace of distributed and renewable energy revolution, and digitalization, which is about enabling a step change in energy efficiency and the performance of existing assets and processes due to the digital acceleration.
Anastasia, I'm sorry, we don't see your slides on the screen.
You don't see my slides? Oh, great to know. Okay, can you see it now? Yeah?
Yes, it works. Thank
you. Отлично. Thank you very much. So what I was saying, yes, that the COVID hasn't happened in a vacuum, that there is already predefined some stresses, and it's important to see the bigger picture of the energy transition. And now we're entering the era of the energy for people and planets, which is formed by the 4Ds. And the 3Ds is well known, decarbonization, decentralization, and digitalization. And the 4D, which we added, is about the disruption as usual, which basically reflects the value that the value generation is moving closer to the end user, and there is a shift in the leadership mindsets from the supply side thinking to the consumer-centric energy futures. And the ways in which energy is being traded, used, and transported are changing faster than ever before. And this also reflects a new pattern of innovation and collaboration shaped by the demand-driven solutions. So transition is a balancing act, and there is no one-size-fits-all, as we say, and the different regions really put the different emphasis on the peace, people, planets, or prosperity, depending on their local context and situations. And the how to secure clean, affordable, and reliable energy is really different, can be different in different regions. Whatever works in Africa and Asia might not work in Europe and vice versa. So while it's really difficult to predict the future, the foresight can help businesses and governments on how to better prepare and shape a different future. And the Council has been doing scenarios and has more than 2 decades of the foresight practice. We've been exchanging experiences and equipping energy leaders around the world with tools, deeper insights, and the practical know-hows. We have our long-term scenarios that we introduced in 2016 to support the climate action conversation, and then refreshed in 2019 to think about the different innovation patterns that emerge in the different futures. And we've been using those scenarios to run the sectoral and regional perspectives and to support leadership conversation on the local levels. And what is more important, we are investing heavily not only in building scenarios, but more on the application, on the use of the scenarios. And we used our world energy scenarios to look at the business model innovation. And we also came up with the concept of the constellation of disruption, which recognizes that there is a more than just technology innovation, but also a need for combinatorial effects of the different sorts of innovation like policy, finance, business model innovation, and behavioral changes. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the crisis scenarios that we've developed right at the crisis time, and the World Energy Transition Radar and Scenario Summits as an application tool that helps energy leaders to apply those scenarios. So as we've been doing for nearly 100 years, our members around the world have been sharing their experiences, actions, and outlooks on the post-pandemic future. And our regular worldwide survey shows a really shift in priorities for action. Lockdown obviously triggers a different pattern of the working from home, greater use of the digital technologies, and we've seen a huge drop in demand for the fossil fuels, especially for transports, and shift in demand for power from industry and offices to homes. And here is just an example of one of the insights that we gathered from one of the rounds of the surveys that we conducted with our global community, which really shows that the crisis has triggered the greatest financial reallocation in history. Many organizations are directing their investments towards digitalization of their existing businesses, towards the R&D in transformational businesses, and towards the sustainability activities. And the crisis has also added a new emphasis on resilience, which extends to include people and supply chains, and even bigger hopes for the clean hydrogen as a clean energy vector. And there are different perspectives on how long it will take to recover from crisis and what is the next normal will look like. And societies are not really aiming to bounce back to before the crisis, but they want to invest in building back better. And resilience has been tested, obviously, and recovery will not be easy. And to help leaders with the essential job of the recovery, our global community rapidly developed a set of the 4 impartial COVID crisis scenarios with a medium-term time horizon to 2024. So each scenario explores 3 critical uncertainties and how they might combine to impact the recovery and the speed and direction of the energy transition. So first is around ambition. That's the uncertainty whether the countries use this crisis as an opportunity for more transformative actions, or they will return to pre-pandemic agenda. The second set of uncertainties is around trust and collaboration. So what will be the approach to progress this ambition, whether it's more collaborative or less collaborative approach? And the third set of uncertainty is around controllability of the virus itself. And here's the divergence between whether a global vaccine is found early to solve the pandemic, or more sustained behavioral changes will be needed in the future. So putting this together, we developed a simple 2x2 matrix to identify most relevant, plausible, and challenging scenarios. And those scenarios presented here in the matrix. The 2 low trust scenarios are Rewind, which is the future which turns away from globalization to repair the domestic economies. So countries are looking for the local solutions and at the same time not really aiming for really transformative actions. And the Records future, which basically relies also on the local solutions and bottom-up diverse approaches, but focuses more on the transformative actions and human-centered transition. And 2 high trust scenarios on the right side hand, the pause, which is basically return to the pre-pandemic normal and agenda, and the fast forward future, which is scenario of the collaborative opportunities for more transformative actions towards successful energy transition. So these scenarios serves as a practical tool to make sense of the new developments, to better understand what lies ahead and what it might mean for the energy transition. So we have used these scenarios to build the World Energy Transition Radar, and the radar detects the real-time signals from across the world and shows how recovery plans starting to change the pace and direction of energy transition. It is the live interactive tool available on our website, and it really provides the unique visibility into what the world energy leaders is thinking and what actions they are taking for the recovery. And in the last several months, we collated nearly 3,000 signals detected by our community. And more than half, more than 60 actually, % of signals indicate the two high ambition scenarios, fast forwards and the records. And the current global snapshots also highlights the growing weights of the signals of the more human-centric transition and emergence and the gaining momentum of the clean energy vectors, such as hydrogen. So the regional radar tells the different stories. They reflect really diverse starting points and approaches to recovery, level of ambitions, and collaboration. For example, in Europe, we see there is signals more indicates move towards the fast forward scenario. And this is really reflects what Jennifer was sharing early on, that they're more striving for the green recovery, building on their Green Deal. Interesting story in India, which really focus more on the relying on the local solutions. There is more dominance of the signals of the record scenario. And interesting in China, they're more on the pause and rewind, which reflects that they're possibly more on track with what they had before the crisis. So we can discuss these differences all the day, but it just shows that all the countries and all the regions really shows policy different approaches to the recovery. And we're obviously inviting everyone to contribute to this signal scanning. So we use these crisis scenarios and the radar as a decision tools and designed a new series of the energy summits, which is a way of using the scenarios, not just reading them, but actually really applying into the life. So each scenario summit convenes leaders in energy and other industries together with the wider stakeholders in government, civil society, and finance. And in the role play live simulations, leaders select and distribute their virtual money, virtual resources in the menu of the strategic options and see at the end what future starts to emerge as a result of their collective actions. And through these live simulations, basically leaders gain a better understanding of the future, which is emerging as an interactive, from the interaction of their actions. They can stress test their decisions and learn fast about the shifting situations. And here's on the right side, you see an example of the summit results that were on a few weeks ago with our CEO and ministerial community during the World Energy Week digital. And you can see that with the icons on the business and civil societies are more making decisions towards returning to pre-pandemic normal, while the governments and investors are more in the transformative space. And then our average still reflects more the post scenario, which is quite interesting. And we played this game in 2 rounds, and between 2 rounds, there was not a really big change, which really shows, as we heard from the participants, that there is a lack of the leadership courage for more ambition actions among some of the communities. So when you compare these results with the real-time signals from the radar, the picture is even more interesting. You can see that there is a big gap in what we aspire the future to be and what real-time signals tell us about the future. And finally, just to say that basically innovation and cooperation remains the key for successful recovery and transformation, and both are changing. And the Council Vision 2025 reflects these needs and focuses on humanizing energy. And basically through all our work indicates that the post-crisis recovery will need to effectively collaborate for inclusive and collaborative innovation. And while collaboration has been always the key in energy transition, the breadth and complexity of collaboration is really changing. We need to address the growing risk of fragmentation and polarization, but convening energy transition leaders across and beyond energy systems to promote inclusive and collaborative innovation. And there is more recognition of the need to convene and engage not just technology producers, but also consumers, cities, citizens, local communities in the process of transformation. And obviously we need to engage diversity, not only regional, but also social and technological, and accelerate learning within and from each other. So in the final words, I'll just say that although the world has changed, we're all learning how to adapt, and the Foresight tools are obviously a good mechanism and platforms to help governments and societies and businesses to manage uncertainties and really prepare for a uncertain future. I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anastasia, very impressive. So we have several questions to our speakers. First, there are, I see, 3 questions to Jennifer. So Jennifer, please, your turn to reply.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. It was very interesting seeing also the presentations of the other speakers. I think there was a lot of, you know, interesting overlaps as well. So that was, I think that was quite a happy coincidence in a way. So maybe to answer first, I think Jose was asking about the what the impact will be of Joe Biden winning the US election. Well, I think already Biden had made a certain commitment to reverse the Trump approach on climate. So there's already very positive indications there that the US is going to change its approach to climate, like I think almost like a U-turn, basically. So I think this is really, in terms of the EU Green Deal, this this would be a very positive development, obviously, because I think the EU is seeing the Green Deal not only as its own plan action plan within its own borders, but I think it's also seeing it as something that will ultimately only work if there are others, other countries supporting this approach and reinforcing this approach within their own borders. And so I think probably right now there's a lot of rethinking going on and planning of the types of opportunities that are going to come into play in terms of how the Green Deal can be taken forward also in a global context. Then I think there was I think Dirk made a question, had a question about the relevance of risk strategies in the current, with the current COVID situation, and in particular with regard to value chains. And I think it's true, value chains have been obviously disrupted. In Malta, we've had, being an island state, this has been quite a difficult situation. But on the other hand, I think I don't think this really affects the benefits of the RIS approach. I think the whole risk conditionality which the EU imposed, originally it was viewed with certain, bit of a question mark, is this really an approach which is going to improve the situation in the country? And I think that the past few years have shown that we have learned a lot from implementing the RIS approach. Not least, it's helped us to understand better situations at local level, the thinking at local level, and bringing in particular, the perspective of industry. I don't think there is sufficient, as yet, there is sufficient business-driven approaches going on with regard to RIS. This is still quite a weakness in our system. And I think also it's still quite weak in terms of the cooperation that could happen between regions and other countries within the EU. I think this is where really RIS could enter more into its own and you could see some interesting developments. But definitely, I think with the Green Deal, the RIS approach remains relevant. I was recently in a webinar as part of this EU Smarter conference, and we were actually discussing what needs to be done with RIS in the context of the EU Green Deal. And basically, there needs to be a factoring in of sustainability more clearly, in a more clear and coherent way into risk strategies. And I think this is something we're going to see happening now in the next phase as the Green Deal is taken on board at national level across the member states. So I think this is a very positive development. In terms of, I think Attila had a question about how many regions. Actually, in the end, we could only, I think we only have one region, but actually, if you look at Malta, you can see definitely different levels of development across the country. The north tends to be more developed than the south. And in fact, what has happened is that the south in recent years has attracted more development projects. For example, my own organization, we relocated to the south, and we have been involved in 2 major structural funds projects located in the south. And the idea was to really bring, for example, the hands-on museum, to bring that to the south of Malta. And it's really helped with a kind of regeneration of the south, which is important. And similarly, I think you could also see Gozo, which is the sister island, as a slightly different context for regional development. But as a whole, yes, there is a kind of confluence between our national and regional policies. But the approaches have been different, and we've actually decided to have separate strategies now between the national and regional, because we're seeing the advantage of this. So I think I'll stop there. Thank you.
So thanks. And we have 2 questions for Julia about the public attitude towards COVID-driven technological changes, and also the to what degree it refers to ethics. Юля.
Спасибо большое за вопросы.
Thank you for the questions. Very, very interesting questions. Based on the survey, during the coronavirus pandemic, there were uncertainties in the community concerning new technologies. We have data on the surge in online psychotherapies use, depression among students. Up to 80% of the students who had online education felt some symptoms of depression. Moreover, there is big concern in the society regarding personal data security, their personal misuse of their personal data by non-state actors, by companies. All these questions are number 1, topping the agenda. The use and the security of data. Along with that, we saw a huge number of cyber attacks during the pandemic. Therefore, these issues are of top priority right now. How to adjust, how to learn to manage security of data. Thank you for the comment to Mr. Miles. I totally agree at the loss of privacy which happened. There are all the signs that in the future, when the crisis is over, we cannot just get back to pre-COVID times. We will find ourselves in the reality we can see right now. And the positive experience of China, which used its social scoring system, is a sign on a stricter policy on data control. And this data will be used for different purposes in the future. So these questions are very relevant. So, dear colleagues, thank you for your questions.
Okay, then Anastasia, please.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that there are two questions. One of the question about the fossil fuels, right? Just let me open the questions. I actually closed them. How fast the transition from the fossil fuels to the renewable will happen. And I think that here is, I can refer to our long-term scenarios if we're talking about the next several decades, that the fossil fuel will continue to provide over 2/3 of the global primary energy by 2040. And I think it's really naive to think that we can meet an increase in demand only with renewables. And if we look, obviously, on a global level, on a different regionalist level, the picture is different. But if we look at our long-term scenarios, we can see that the oil demand peaks between 2025 and 2030 in modern jazz scenario, which is more innovative worlds, and also in unfinished symphony, which is more the future with the coordinated policies towards more environmental transition. And the hard rock, which is more fragmented future, the oil demand rises till 2040 with a low plateau afterwards. Again, this is a global picture. On the regional levels, there is a different stories. And the question is really not whether it will stay. It will stay in quite a lot of percentage in the energy mix, but how it will be produced and used in a more sustainable way. And here, the more we can hear a lot about the circular carbon economy models are really gaining momentum, and with the 4R approach in play. And the second question was about why investors and industry so much splits in the transformational vertical axis. I guess this came from the Scenario Summit snapshot that I shared, where indeed civil society and business really indicates it's more conservative actions, not that transformative, towards the post scenario, while the investors and governments are looking at the transformative actions. One of the comments that we received from the participants of the summits is that business really rely on actions from the governments and investors, and they want to see not just the plans, but the real actions. But at the moment, they're more taking more conservative approach. But that's really reflects the group, the stakeholders that we convened at the Scenario Summits. I think it would be interesting to compare with other summits, and now we're piloting this on the regions, and we'll be able to share some results in a few months' time. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much. And just a few words to conclude. So I'm really grateful to all the speakers, because their rich presentations allow me to finalize it in a very simple way. So first, I may say that the pandemic crisis has demonstrated the increased relevance of foresight for policymakers as a basis for early warning and rapid response mechanisms. Secondly, the foresight remains as an influential tool for designing STI policies, and the right examples are the basic science technology plan in Japan, the Malteser National Research and Innovation Strategy, the European programs, the global scenarios for the energy sector as an advice by the World Energy Council, the global businesses and national governments. The next point is we definitely see the greater attention towards social impact and sustainability across all national and international foresight exercises. Also, the pandemic crisis has stimulated much greater dynamics of technological change and its impact on work, on lifestyle, on jobs, on health management, and the emergence of new multidisciplinary specific technological trends like a whole package of specific COVID tech, as well as the emergence of new requirements towards traditional areas, like, for example, new generation smart city technologies. For all these reasons, definitely there will be a new impetus for promoting further foresight methodologies, and particular STPV and scenario approaches as really important and well developed methodological tools. And also the pandemic has highlighted a new ambition for multi-level and well-coordinated foresight, and subsequently multi-level policy design taking account of also smart specialization and interests of local communities. So I think we can conclude at this point. Again, thank you very much. And given that we're a bit out of schedule, so I suggest we meet in, say, 5 to 7 minutes again for the next session, which will be chaired by Alexander Sokolov. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Let us meet in 15 minutes to 5 Moscow time, in 8 minutes. Okay, see you then.